You are listening to the voice of David Ben-Gurion, proclaiming the independence of the State of Israel.
לפיכך נתכנסנו, אנו חברי מועצת העם, נציגי היישוב העברי והתנועה הציונית, ביום סיום המנדט הבריטי.
By virtue of the natural and historic right of the Jewish people and of the resolution of the General Assembly of the United Nations, we hereby proclaim the establishment of the Jewish state in Palestine to be called Medinat Yisrael, the State of Israel. This is the story of the return of a wanderer. This is the tale of the fulfillment of a dream. This is the saga of the rebirth of a nation. This is the record of Israel. Our call goes out to the Jewish people all over the world to rally to our side in the task of immigration and development, and to stand by us in the great struggle for the fulfillment of the dream of generations, for the redemption of Israel. With trust in Almighty God, we set our hand to this declaration at this session of the Provisional State Council, on the soil of the Homeland in the city of Tel Aviv, on this Sabbath Eve, the 5th of the Hebrew month of Iyar, 5708, the 14th day of May, 1948.
היום הזה, ערב שבת, אייר תש"ח 14 במאי 1948.
A new star had risen in the Middle East, and they called it Israel. Some men will say that Israel was born that day as Palestine's Jewish leaders met in a Tel Aviv museum and proclaimed their state. For the 25-year League of Nations mandate had come to an end, and in Jerusalem, High Commissioner General Sir Alan Cunningham closed the final chapter of British mandatory rule in the Holy Land.
On the morrow, a new chapter opens, and Palestine's history goes on. It is not my wish at this period of the British departure to turn back the pages and look at the past. It would be easy in doing so to say sometimes, here we did right, and no doubt at other times, there we did wrong. For in this complex matter of the government of Palestine, the way ahead has not always been clear, and the future has often been obscure.
The following day, a guard of honor of the Highland Regiment stood at stiff attention as the flag of Britain made its final descent over Government House, and the British High Commissioner said goodbye.
In our memories will live the remembrance of the beauties and the more happy associations of Palestine, and in our hearts will remain the constant desire that cooperation, goodwill, and amity may be re-established between us to our mutual benefit in the early future. Goodbye.
Thus Israel was born, as Britain relinquished her mandate over the Holy Land, and Jews took up the reins of government in Tel Aviv. But the historian who dates the Jewish state from May 14th, 1948, ignores 20 centuries in the history of an ancient people, the constant daily prayer of 2,000 years of dispersion, the prayer for a final return to the homeland of Israel. Al-Naharat Babel, by the rivers of Babylon. There we sat down, yea, we wept when we remembered Zion. How shall we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? They wept when they remembered Zion. Through 2,000 years of dispersion and persecution, in the dungeons of imperial Rome, the tortures of Torquemada, the massacres of Kishinev, the degradation of Yemen and of Warsaw. And then there came a man and an idea. The time was the close of the 19th century. The man, Theodor Herzl. The idea, political Zionism. A detailed plan of statehood, and a force to put that plan into effect. The Zionist movement. If you will it, he said, it is no dream. And there were men who willed it. Men like the brilliant chemist, Chaim Weizmann.
There should be one place in the world, in God's wide world, where we could live and express ourselves in accordance with our character and make our contribution to civilization in our own way and through our own channels.
The vision inspired by Herzl and his followers, the seeds planted by men like Chaim Weizmann, took root in the downtrodden Jewish communities of Europe, and little bands of pioneers began the long journey back to Palestine. What they found was desert, barren and neglected for generations. The once terraced hills had lost their trees, and the good soil had been washed to the valleys and carried to the sea. Mi Yivneh HaGalil. Who will build Galilee? We will build Galilee. Irrigate its fields with sweat and tears. Fill in its swamps with the bodies of the sick. Terrace its mountains with the bones of the fallen. If you will it, it is no dream. Inch by inch, acre by acre, farmstead by farmstead, an entire land was being reclaimed. And a Christian world gave token of its admiration. Britain's Balfour Declaration in 1917 and the League of Nations mandate over Palestine 5 years later, recognizing the ancient bond between Zion and the Jew. But there were Jews whose pathway to Zion was forever barred. Europe rang with the rasping echoes of hatred, of marching men and the voice of Adolf Hitler.
Und insofern auch vielleicht noch interessant. Aber du sollst, die Zukunft gehört den jungen Völkern, die diese Fragen lösen.
Of the knock on the door at midnight and the hobnailed boots clattering up the stairs. And a song, the dread song of conquest, of Deutschland, Deutschland, Deutschland über alles. The ancient prayer for the dead. 6 million Jewish dead. God, full of mercy, who dwelleth on high, cause the souls of our departed brothers of Auschwitz, Majdanek, Treblinka, and the other scenes of torture and death to find repose and peace among the souls of the holy in the firmament of the sky. Those who were left at the end turned their sorrowing faces westward, or eastward, or homeward toward Jerusalem, yearning for a land they had never seen and for welcoming hands they had never known. The voice of Chaim Weizmann called them home.
Jewish history has always been working through the remnants of Israel. Again we stand before a period when we shall have to collect and assemble the remnant from the north and the south, from the east and the west.
And the world took notice of the fate of those remnants of Israel and of Jewish pleas for the one solution that could guarantee an end to homelessness and eternal wandering: statehood through partition of the Holy Land. The United Nations debates on the partition resolution were bitter and vehement.
The Arab states cannot tolerate this break in their unity and this menace to their political and economic life. They are entitled to have a decisive say in all matters that affect their regional interests. Thus, they oppose the creation of a Jewish state in Palestine now or at any future time.
So went one Arab argument, to which Moshe Sharet replied,
if it is a question of imposition, then the imposition of Jewish predominance upon 400,000 Arabs has to be compared with an attempt to impose Arab predominance upon 700,000 Jews in Palestine.
The immigrants coming into Palestine, the origins of many of whom is not known, carry the seeds of many a subversive movement for the Near East. This certainly will contribute to the disturbance of international peace.
If you compare the map of Jewish agricultural settlement activities with the map of areas infested with malaria before we started, you will see a striking geographical correspondence between the two. And in draining those swamps, in making those areas habitable, in making that land cultivable, thousands and thousands of young lives were cut down in the very process of drainage and as a result of the malaria. Now, on the one hand, you want to derive all the benefits from this development, which has cost the Jews such immense amount of capital and such tremendous amounts of energy and so many lives. On the other hand, you want to arrest their progress. And if, in order to escape that arrest of progress, which they want to impose on you, they want to separate themselves from you and set themselves up as a Jewish state separate from the Arab state, again, you want to prevent them from doing it. You are not merely trying to have it both ways, you are trying to have it 3 ways, 4 ways, in every way possible.
The Honorable Delegate of the United Kingdom told you on Saturday that by enforcing partition, you will run the risk of exciting trouble in Palestine. He said that in his native English cool reserve. The direct knowledge and experience of the mandatory should have moved him to be more precise on that subject. In our opinion, he should have informed you that by imposing partition in Palestine, you will precipitate the country into a virtual bloodbath.
And on November 29th, 1947,
we will proceed the roll call. You all know how to vote. Those who are in favor will say yes, those who are against will say no. And the abstainers, always they know what to say. We will start it now.
Afghanistan, no. Argentina, abstention. Australia, yes. Belgium? Yes. Bolivia? Yes. Brazil? Yes. Belarusia? Yes.
The final vote on the United Nations
Canada?
Palestine Partition Resolution
Yes.
had begun. The
Chile?
galleries were filled with tense and anxious spectators.
Abstention?
Some of the votes were hardly unexpected.
Iran? No. Iraq? No. Lebanon? No. Soviet Union? Yes. The United Kingdom? Abstain. The United States? Yes. Uruguay? Yes. Venezuela? Yes. Yemen? No. Yugoslavia? Abstain. 4, 6, 8, 10.
The news reached Tel Aviv at midnight, and the world tuned in on Mograby Square.
A good cross-section of Tel Aviv's population is here tonight, about 20,000, jam-packed in Mograby Square, where loudspeakers have been set up to announce the result of the important vote that's now taking place in New York. People are standing on top of trucks and buses, hanging over balconies and out of windows, perched on top of street lamps and telephone poles, all waiting for the momentous word that may spell victory or defeat for their 2,000-year dream of a Jewish homeland. I think you can hear that loudspeaker now. What is it? That's it, ladies and gentlemen. Partition passed 33 to 13, and is this crowd excited? They're starting their horror dances now. All over the square, little circles are forming. People are laughing and crying and shouting and whirling around in the wild horror dance. Perhaps you can hear it now. They're starting to sing Hatikva, the Jewish national anthem, away off in a corner of the square, and gradually the horror dances are breaking up and people are taking up the refrain of Hatikva. All around me I can see Jews weeping unashamed while they sing. Let's listen to them.
I wish to put on record that my government does not recognize the validity of this decision, will reserve the freedom of action towards its implementation, and holds those who were influential in passing it against the free conscience of mankind responsible for the consequences.
In the months that followed the partition resolution, civil strife shook the Holy Land as Palestine Arabs rioted in protest. Muslim bands laid waste Jewish settlements. Rifle and mortar fire echoed through Tel Aviv and Haifa. Jewish Jerusalem starved and thirsted under siege. And from beyond the borders, the Arab League threatened a holy war if a Jewish state were created at the end of the British Mandate. But the Jews pressed forward with their plan. It was their one chance in 2,000 years of dispersion. And at 4 o'clock on the 14th of May, as the last British soldier left Jerusalem, they took that chance. The Declaration of Independence of the State of Israel became history. The traditional shofar, the ancient ram's horn that heralded the kings of Israel and Judah, hailed Chaim Weizmann, first president of the State Council of the Republic of Israel.
I am fully convinced that all who have and will become citizens of the Jewish state will strive their utmost to live up to the new opportunity which history has bestowed upon them. It will be our destiny to create institutions and values of a free community in the spirit of the great tradition which have contributed so much to the thought and spirit of mankind.
The first bomb of the Arab invasion fell on Tel Aviv at dawn on May 15th. It fell as Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion beamed his first broadcast to America.
By mobilizing in full the defensive Jewish strength, capable to resist and crush any hostile attack. But we will do it also by a consistent policy of good neighborliness in Jewish-Arab cooperation, economically, socially, and culturally, for the joint benefit of the two Semitic peoples.
Sudden air attack forced an unscheduled departure from his script.
That all decent peoples throughout the world will help us in our difficult task. We know we are facing grave dangers. At the time when I'm speaking, Tel Aviv is being bombed by hostile planes.
And there were other broadcasts from Tel Aviv in those tense days.
Israel under fire. The first broadcast recorded from Palestine since the end of the British Mandate. The first broadcast from Tel Aviv in the new Jewish state of Israel.
Arab forces in the Holy Land have not been silent. Egypt's planes, British-made Spitfires, roared the Arabs' defiance over Tel Aviv, provisional capital of Israel. Now to a Tel Aviv housetop as the first Spitfires come over, and to Arthur Holzman.
The plane had just released a bomb. This is the first series of air raids Tel Aviv has received in this present struggle with the Arabs. Here comes another one now. Just one Spitfire circling over the city. Haganah aircraft is not as yet in the air. Now another plane is coming in from the sea. He's trailing a little smoke. He may have been hit. Cruising now inland. Rapid fire now from Haganah anti-aircraft. There's the plane. Another one in from the sea. It's dropped his load of bombs in the vicinity of the port. Is now rising to about 3,000 feet. No Jewish aircraft in the air as yet.
With the air attack on Tel Aviv, the Arab invasion began in earnest. Across the southern border marched the Egyptian army. From the north came the troops of Lebanon and Syria. Iraqis joined with Jordan's Arab Legion in a push from the east. And the men and women of the Jewish underground, of Palmach, of Haganah, of Irgun and Stern, came above ground to form the Defense Army of Israel.
Let go
struggle against the Arab invaders, they were joined by Jewish fighters from abroad, by volunteers from Europe, Asia, Africa, and America.
Hey, buddy, is this the Machal discharge board?
Why, no.
Well, then what is it?
This is the Machal's Machal.
Well, the joint's as quiet as a tomb. What's going on here?
What's going on here? Why, everybody knows.
Machal was the name given to foreigners serving in Israel's forces. These particular foreigners were 8,500 miles from home, but the camp shows they put together were strictly USA.
Shalom, Zevra. They're right. It is the Machal Show. 35 minutes of fun and music coming to you from the stage of the beautiful Merkaz Machal in Tel Aviv, only 8,500 miles from downtown Hollywood. Downbeat, maestro. Oh, I'm Miss Sugar for my sugar. She's Miss Sugar for me. Yes, I swear it, she's my Geweret. I'm her Adonai. I'm sure that she's my Bachura. Her love for me's not ein devar. Oh, I'm Miss Sugar for my sugar. She's Miss Sugar for me.
But moments of relaxation were few. The war was grim and bitter. And a small group of United Nations observers, led by Count Folke Bernadotte, sought valiantly to stop the flow of blood.
I could not concentrate my work on the truce. I had to concentrate my work on negotiation for peace. The replies for my suggestions I received from the Provisional Jewish Government on the 6th of July. And the following day, the 7th of July, I received the two parties, the Jewish reply for prolongation of the truce, the demilitarization of Jerusalem and parts of Haifa. And as far as prolongation of the truce is concerned, they accepted a prolongation of the truce. The following morning, about 5 o'clock in the morning, I received the Arab reply for the prolongation of the truce, and that was, as you know, negative. They rejected my proposal for prolongation of the truce.
And the war went on. By all odds, it should have been a quick and easy Arab victory. By all odds, the forces of 7 Arab states should have overrun the Jews in short order and ended the 2,000-year dream in the span of a fortnight. But the Jews had their backs to the sea and their feet firmly rooted in the soil. There was no Moses to part the waters for their escape. This time their greatest weapon was a Hebrew phrase, ein brera, no other way, no escape, no alternative to victory except annihilation. And because they willed it, victory was theirs. The first Arab state to sign an armistice with Israel was Egypt. The date was February 18th, 1949, and in Tel Aviv, Foreign Minister Moshe Sharet announced the armistice to assembled newsmen.
Does this agreement is subject to ratification by the Egyptian parliament?
No, sir. It enters into force immediately on signature. As it's in force already. It has been in force for the last 3 quarters of an hour.
Is it too soon to speak of talks of a peace nature with Egypt?
Certainly, yes. And why Paris? I mean, it's not a question of it being too soon. I mean, it may be utterly unwarranted.
Yes. Well, what is the form on that, sir? What is your own view?
Nothing. I mean, we've always been ready for peace. I mean, we would have been ready to skip the intermediary stage of an armistice and plunge straight into peace talks. But a different course commended itself to our neighbors, and we fell in.
An armistice is not a peace, but rather a cessation of war. It is a time to count the dead, and they were many. In a memorial service at Tel Aviv's municipal stadium, Israel wept for her fallen. They are gone and will return no more to their homes. But the losses were grave on both sides, and among the neutrals as well.
Count Folk Bernadotte is dead. Dead because he consecrated himself completely to the cause of world peace.
Dr. Ralph Bunch, successor to Count Bernadotte and architect of the Arab-Jewish armistice.
Yet in our very sorrow, we can find cause for hope. We can be hopeful in the knowledge that great men like Count Bernadotte are ready to serve the United Nations and the cause of peace.
With the end of the fighting and the tragedies of war, Israelis turned to the developing of their country and their culture. Their folk song. The National Hebrew Opera. Sports, highlighted by Israel Olympic Games.
Finkelstein serve. Love all. Love one.
Education. The Jewish State Radio.
This is Call Israel, calling on 43.9 meters or 6.8 megacycles.
Folk dancing. Cafe life. And their religion. Chief Rabbi Itzhak Halevi Herzog.
Having just seen your faith in the future of Israel, in divine providence, confirmed by events great and wondrous, immediately after the terrific Holocaust of a third of Jewry by satanic forces that had designed the total wiping off of Israel, the people of God, in a special sense, we shall become now God conscious, Torah conscious, Zion conscious. Be firm, be staunch in your undying faith, and praised by that faith, face now the future.
Along with the growth of their culture came the development of their land, and there were the sounds of building. Israel surveyed its fields and valleys, its cities and settlements, its plains and wastelands. There was work to be done before this newborn state could become a homeland. There were crops to be sown and wells to be dug. There were harvests to be gathered and pipes to be laid and rocks to be moved and rubble to be cleared, and there were houses and more houses to be built for new Israelis.
Ich möchte ein Haus.
Wave after wave of new immigrants swarmed through the open ports of Israel. Population figures skyrocketed 50% in a year. Newcomers were huddled into crowded, ill-equipped camps and housed in leaky tents and flimsy shacks. They had reached the homeland, but they had yet to know the simple comforts of a home. In scores of languages, they spoke one common plea. Jews from Poland.
Ja chcę dom, albo mieszkanie, a jeżeli nie ma, to po prostu pokój dla mnie i dla mojej rodziny.
From Germany.
Ich möchte ein Haus, vielleicht nur eine Wohnung oder wenigstens ein Zimmer für mich und meine Familie.
From Romania.
Vreau o casă, un apartament sau cel mult o cameră pentru mine și familia mea.
From North Africa.
Je voudrais une maison, un toit, rien qu'une chambre pour moi et les miens.
From Yemen.
أني راسا بايت أو حاضر
رغم على شيء أما حسامة نهكر وهجاشا بحارث ما هالشامش بقايس بشولي وبشول كل مش بحتي.
From Iraq.
عاوز بيتي من شاني ومن شان مرتي ومن شان ولد بتاعي يولد.
From England.
Actually, what I'd like is a house, an apartment, a room, just a roof over my head for me and my family.
The babble of tongues in the tent camps underlined the staggering task of absorption that lay ahead. How could a single culture be formed from this sudden, strange mixture of nationalities, where the loudspeaker in immigrant camps must call children to school in 15 different languages? How would the Frau Doktor from Heidelberg find a common ground with Bokharian women such as these, whose songs and dances reflect the culture of deepest Africa? For true national and cultural unity, Israeli leaders counted heavily on the youth, on the young men and women training in Israel's army, on immigrant children educated in Israel's school, convinced that from Israel's schools and concert halls, sports arenas, marketplaces, radio stations, theaters, there would emerge one day a new and united voice, the voice of Israel.
This is Call Israel, calling on 43.9 meters or 6.8 megacycles, and on medium wavelengths of 380, 460, and 522
Finkelstein, sir. Love all. Love one. Love two. 1, 2. All.
hatchala kasha. Every beginning is difficult. The men of modern Israel repeated that ancient phrase. Added to the problems of housing and absorption, health and rehabilitation, were the problems of achieving lasting peace with neighbors in the Middle East, the problem of helping Jews still imperiled in other parts of the world, the problem of economic development, of production to be increased, exports to be raised, minerals to be exploited, bonds to be sold, investments to be fostered. But the beginnings, the foundations had been laid. A state had been established. The voices of its ministers were heard in the councils of nations.
The delegation of Israel feels that if we rise from our deliberations without an earnest effort to advance towards agreed settlements of major international issues, we shall not have served our destiny or risen to the full level of our cherished trust. All delegations should be haunted by these perils.
Abba Eban, the first delegate of a Jewish state since the reign of the biblical kings. The dream of the return had been achieved, and the ingathering of exiles goes on. In the fields, new crops are being harvested. Cities throb with commerce and every art. The spirit of freedom is alive in every household. And once again, as of old, the song of the Jewish shepherdess is heard in the hills of Judea, in the land of Israel. And they shall build the waste cities and inhabit them, and they shall plant vineyards and drink the wine thereof, and they shall also make gardens and eat the fruit of them.